Hello, and welcome to the East Africa Business Podcast. I'm Sam Floy, and I'm here on the continent to learn about the emerging business scene. I'll be interviewing startups, investors, and organisations who are all playing their part in helping the region develop and grow. And in doing this podcast, I'll be sharing with you the things that I learned along the way. Most business is about matching demand with supply. From her work as a venture capitalist, talking to businesses about what would help them grow, Audrey found that resoundingly the answer was tech talent. Investigating the options available to students wanting to learn these skills, she found they were subpar. Moringa School is addressing the need by providing world-class education in how to build apps at an affordable cost. We discuss the innovative teaching methodologies that they adopt, ways of breaching the skills gap in Kenya, and prospects for taking these vocational-based higher education alternatives across the continent and into different skills. Our interview was on the balcony outside their office, and so it gets a little windy at times. But either way, I hope you enjoy. Cool. So I'm here with Audrey from Moringa School. Audrey, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Cool. So just to get us started, could you tell us a bit about you and a bit about Moringa School?
Sure. So my name is Audrey. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Moringa School. Moringa School is a world-class coding accelerator based here in Kenya. We have a 95% job placement rate, so our graduates are working at some of the top tech companies here in Kenya and across the continent.
Amazing. So when did it start?
Yeah, so Moringa School started in April 2014 when I was working at Savannah Fund. And when I was working at Savannah Fund, they were running their second accelerator class. So we had one company from Nigeria, one from Kenya, and one from Ghana. And every single week, as I went back to them and asked them what I could do to support them, to help their businesses grow, the reply was always, we're looking for talent. We're looking for people to join our team and add a lot of value. And more so than that, they were looking for high-quality developers. And one of the teams actually thought a lot about outsourcing. So I was really confused, because unemployment's so high, and there's clearly, a huge demand for jobs here. So I went to colleges, went to universities, training programs, and realized the way that computer science is being taught is very theoretical, very outdated, and on top of that, the teaching methodologies were just really poor. So from that point on, that's when we started Moringa School.
So are you a coder yourself?
Yeah, so I do have a background in tech. I'm not the best, which is why we have a really strong curriculum team outside of me. Yeah.
And how easy is it to turn someone into a good developer?
It's taken us a couple iterations to be true. I mean, when we got started, we took the Western model of this intensive 3-4 month training. But what we actually ended up doing is we studied a lot about neuroscience, best teaching methodologies and learning methodologies, and we're actually applying it to our course now. So now we're putting in a flipped classroom model. We're having students take a lot of ownership over their own learnings, and that actually propels them a lot further than what our previous style was like.
What's it called? Flip classroom?
Yeah, flip classroom.
What's that?
Yeah, so flip classroom is essentially where we put students in charge of learning the fundamentals of what they need to know. Right. So instead of having a teacher in front of the classroom, teaching students and doing knowledge transfer that way, we have students engaging with the curriculum and content in pairs or in groups, and they're actually working through the content together. And the only time when our technical mentors come in is to support the students when they have questions or when they're building out projects, and to help them unblock a lot of their challenges. Yeah.
So if I was interested in coming to Moringa School, what are the options I've got?
Yeah, so Moringa School, we have a number of different programs. We have Moringa Prep and Moringa Core. So Moringa Prep is our 5-week full-time or a 15-week part-time intro to programming course, right? And we use this as our admissions process into Moringa Core. And Moringa Core is our intensive track-based 19-week program. And this program, students choose between being a full-stack developer or an Android developer.
What does full-stack developer mean?
Yeah, so full-stack is, you learn Ruby on Rails and you learn JavaScript. So, backend languages to really build holistic apps.
And how many people have done this?
Yeah, so we have an alumni base of over 110 students. Yeah, so like I said, they're working at a lot of pretty impressive companies here in Kenya.
Like what?
Yeah, like Safaricom, is the largest telecom here. Barclays, Cellulant, Crop Silicon, Sam Source. They're working at even international companies.
And so the people who are coming and doing the course, what were they doing before?
Yeah, so a lot of our students either came directly from high school, so they're high school graduates. Most of them came from college, so either college dropouts who realized that they weren't getting enough value from their college experience, or recent graduates who can't find jobs. We also had people in the middle of their career who realized that learning how to code is extremely important in today's day and age. So they also quit their jobs or take a sabbatical to join us.
And how did it? Is it expensive?
Yeah, so the way that we're priced is equivalent to a semester of college or university in Kenya. So it's actually extremely affordable. The way that we're priced is Moringa Prep is $350 or 35,000 shillings for the full time, and then Moringa Core full time is 100,000 shillings.
Okay. Yeah. And are most people in a position to pay for that?
Yeah. So I mean, right now, as of course with economies of scale, like the bigger we scale, the cheaper the course will get. But what we realize is that we also don't want to undervalue our course and the amount of effort that we're putting into crafting the experience for students. Yeah. So.
And so they typically get a job after doing the Moringa Core, is it? So yes. That's the 19 weeks. Mm-hmm. Okay. So 19 weeks, that's like 5 months. I'm sure, right? Yeah, 5 months. Okay. All right. And so, what are the types of jobs they're going to? Are they using these coding skills straight away, or is it more that they just have this appreciation and they can now get a job at Safaricom?
Yeah, no. So they're definitely using their skills, and that's one of the things that we require is that we built our curriculum to match the Kenyan market, right? So whatever employers need, and like we talk to them a lot, like what are some skills that you're looking for? We put that into our curriculum so that when they join teams, they can start contributing.
And so, what are the main skills that Kenyan companies look for?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of Android, there's some PHP, and the reason we teach Ruby on Rails is that PHP is a very hard first language to learn. So what we say is that if you learn Ruby on Rails really well, you can translate the syntax into PHP. So yeah, there's PHP, Python. Some companies are moving a lot into data science. So of course, Python is a great jumping point to learn R and other languages.
And is this different to, let's say, the market in the US or the UK?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay, so how is it different?
And is there a specific?
So what I'm just wondering is, so you're saying you're making the course tailored for the Kenyan market. I'm wondering if you were to then take it to the US, how would it be, or would things match up as well? Or like, what are the main differences?
Yeah, so I think one thing you touched on before, so there's two things. One is, there obviously isn't as much disposable income in Kenya. So we really need to make sure our course, yes, we're charging money for it because I truly believe that if the market wants it, they'll pay for it. But on top of that, we need to make it extremely high quality, right? Another difference with the US market is that, okay, so going back to the first point, sorry. There's a lot more people in the middle and upper class in the US that can afford to spend $12,000 to $18,000, right, on one of these courses, right? And it costs that much in the US. But in Kenya, we don't have as many people in the middle and upper class, so we need to find ways to innovate around our pricing model. The second thing is that there's a lot of assumptions that US coding schools make about what people know going into the course, right? A lot of computer literacy, a lot of, even knowledge of, everyone knows what a server is, or, everyone learns in this way. But in Kenya, we've had to alter the education to the way that people learn here. Right, the way that the 844 the primary secondary school system and university system works is that it's really based on regurgitation and memorization. Right, so students aren't taught skills like critical thinking and creative thinking, and that's all stuff that we have to help them unlearn when they come to Moringa School, and then help them relearn. Those are important skills for the marketplace. Yeah, so I think that the challenge here is pretty large.
How do you teach creative thinking?
I mean, there are a lot of simulated exercises, right? Giving students a lot of space when they build out their projects to figure out, okay, so this is a problem I'm trying to solve. This is a solution I came up with, but I've also thought a lot about other solutions in the marketplace, or the first principles of the problem I'm trying to solve. Yeah, so we just give them a lot of mental models or tools to foster creativity.
Nice. Yeah. And is it mainly, so you I think you hinted at it, that people sort of work in groups? Are they? Do you so you have a class that that you're with for your sort of course, essentially. So it's not individual learning, it's you are the class of 2015 kind of thing. Is that how it works?
Yeah. So we're huge on group learning, right? Because if you look at any of the learning psychology books, working with someone else, even if you're moving forward a lot faster than this other person, actually reteaching the material to this person and helping them get to the place that they need to be successful, that enforces learning on both parties. right? So it's actually better to learn in pairs or in groups than individual, right? And of course, there's some times where it's good to challenge yourself individually, but I think there's still a lot of value in working in groups. Yeah.
And have many of the people who have graduated, do they then go on to start their own company, or is it mainly just, I want to get hired by a company?
Yeah, so one of my personal philosophies is also that our graduates should go and get jobs, right? Because when you work for someone, you learn what to do, what not to do, and on top of that, you gain startup capital, right? I think I've seen so many entrepreneurs in Kenya who just don't have any money, right? So like that sort of pressure and anxiety when you're like, how am I gonna like feed myself, right? How am I gonna pay for rent? I'm still not making money, right? I think those are a bunch of added pressures onto the already existing list of all these, stresses of starting a company. So I really do encourage them to like go make money first, like learn as much as you can, and then bring that to the company that you're going to start.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you started in 2014. So I imagine everyone's still in the employment phase at the moment.
Yeah.
Cool. In the classes, have you sort of felt that people are sort of sparking and coming up with ideas and things, or are they still quite focused towards, I want to learn, I need to learn everything?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a balance, right? Because I think there's a lot of, what do we call it? I'm blanking right now. But there's a lot of self-doubt, right? When students like are going through this course, it's really challenging. And then they often question, like, do I actually know enough to get a job? Right? So a lot of what we need to do is to kind of pull them out of that and help them realize that, there's a bunch of other stuff that goes into successfully getting a job, right? It's your technical skills, your portfolio, but on top of that, it's like a lot of these like interpersonal skills, right? So we train a lot in those as well, so that when they show up for an interview, they can really just, blow it out of the water. Yeah.
What are some of the key interpersonal skills that you think are important for getting a job?
Yeah. So anywhere from effective communication, effective interaction, creative thinking, and critical thinking. Yeah, so there's like the 4 key pillars that we focus on. And then, there's skills within each pillar, right? There's communication, teamwork, feedback, that we also really try to hone in with the students. Yeah.
Is the hiring process similar to what it is in the US in terms of when you go to an interview, do they ask sort of how many hairdressers are there in New York kind of thing? Do they ask those sort of brain teaser questions, or is it a different process for people hiring?
It completely depends on the companies. Yeah, we've heard a whole array of things. I mean, there's anything from just like coming in and like meeting you and like talking to you about who you are and nothing technical, and then bringing the technical part later. There's some companies that immediately administer the technical assessment, so it's really different. Yeah, I haven't heard much of the consulting questions though. So. Yeah.
With the companies that you work with, is it do people just sort of say, I want some Moringa School graduates, or is it more of a deeper partnership?
Yeah, so I mean, we're definitely looking to foster deeper partnerships. So what we realize is that sometimes when our graduates go and work for companies, companies don't quite know how to take on a new developer or how to integrate them better into the team, right? It's not even just Moringa School, but it's like any new developer onto their team. So something we thought a lot about is how do we support these companies so that they have a stronger developer team and a stronger culture. So yeah, it's something that we're considering. We haven't dove into it yet because we're still focused on our education, but yeah, it's coming.
So where did the developers in these companies learn to code if they didn't have Moringa School?
Yeah, so a lot of them are self-taught, and I think that causes a big problem, actually. So self-teaching is important, right? I think it's really good, and part of the skills that we teach our students too is how do you self-learn. But the problem is there's a lot of really bad materials on the internet, and so sometimes, if students are learning how to code, they go into Stack Overflow or W3 schools, and some of the suggestions that people are making are actually like not good. They're learning those skills, and then later on they have to like unlearn them. So I think what we do is create a really strong foundation. So students want to keep learning other languages or anything else, they know where to find the best resources.
Did you write this curriculum from scratch?
Yeah, so we're partnering with a school in the US in order to make a really world-class curriculum.
Okay. Yeah. So tell me a bit about the school in the US.
Yeah, so it's a school called Epicodus, and we're working with them. Like I said, to help build our curriculum. We've also partnered with Hack Reactor, like I said, to really instill some of the best practices. So, yeah.
And in terms of learning to code, you can just copy and paste kind of thing. As in, in terms of the curriculum doesn't change. Like even though it's going to sound a silly question, but even though we're coding in Kenya, it's the same code that's being written as it is in the States.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, I think there's a lot of problems with coding in Kenya. So a lot of developer teams don't use Agile, they don't use Scrum, and these are all like really effective workflows, right? Effective ways of working in teams, and that's also something that we hope to instill in the companies here.
Okay, so do you teach your students how to run Scrum?
Yeah.
And you're saying that though that the companies that they get hired into aren't operating in a Scrum mechanism, or what do you call it? Scrum methodology, workflow. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, do you think that's going to change, or do you think that Agile and Scrum aren't applicable to Kenya?
Oh, I mean, they're definitely applicable. I mean, it's just a workflow for developers. So I think it's something that that people need to adopt. And on top of that, I think there's a lot of like other workflow tools that are really important, right? I've met like random developers working for these like multinationals, like huge humanitarian organizations, and they don't even know what GitHub is, right? And which is just so shocking to me. So I think there's a lot of education that we need to do.
Okay. Do you think that some of the people who are coming to Moringa School might be sort of, I know that at the moment you're talking about graduates going into these companies. Do you reckon it might be the other way around? As in the companies might send their developers to you to sort of brush up?
Yeah. So in our first couple of cohorts, we actually had a few companies do that. Yeah, so we're definitely seeing that as a trend. Yeah.
And is the only way that you make money through the school fees, so through the fees, or do you also make money on the in other ways?
Yeah, so right now it's through school fees. We've also done 2-week secondary school trainings during their holidays, so to get to more younger students to get excited about learning how to code. Yeah, something that we're also starting to consider is that our curriculum, it is like, it's not just even on a Kenyan standard, it's on a global standard. It's like pretty solid. And what we're thinking about is opening it up to students like even outside of Africa. So we have students currently applying from over 10 countries on the continent, right? So there's a lot of demand for the course that we're providing. But even outside of that, right? Like our course is way cheaper than a lot of courses in the US or in Europe, right? And how can students there, get an experience coming out here to Kenya, like seeing what the technology space is about, but also learn how to code. So that's something we're considering. Yeah.
I mean, could this learning happen remotely, or do you think that you have to be here in person?
For now, you have to be here in person, because I think the learning experience that we're crafting is really important for students to be in person. But we are in the process of testing out a few remote programs. Yeah.
And can you tell me a bit about those?
Work in progress.
Work in progress.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So since you started Moringa School, what's been the biggest surprise?
In terms of
at the beginning, I thought this, when I project forward 2 years, the company's definitely going to do this, or it's definitely going to look like this. And then when you actually fast forward 2 years, it's different.
Yeah, I think honestly the biggest surprise is how much more we can do, to be honest. Like, I went to World Economic Forum this year in Rwanda, and what everyone was talking about was the fourth industrial revolution, right? People were saying, like all these things are going to happen. There's going to be artificial intelligence, like robots, like all this stuff. And one of the key things that they talked about in Africa, right, is how do we create these more intensive short courses that are tailored to the market? Or so people were just talking about this, like the president of Rwanda, like the head of McKinsey, like they were all just talking about this. So I think the really exciting thing about our work is that we're training not just low level skills, but truly like high level skills, right, and getting people into jobs. So what we've realized is that it's beyond coding education, right? It's really higher education, right? So with our work, how do we look to transform higher education, right? How do we look at other industries that are really starved for talent, right? And like high level talent, it could be like finance, data science, whatever it is, and actually start creating curriculum and training for those. Yeah, so that when students consider, going to university or going to our program, they might actually choose our program instead.
Yeah. So is that a trend that you're seeing? People shunning university and going for more, or wanting to go to learn more industry-ready skills?
Yeah. So I mean, we have a number of students who go to like some of the top universities in Kenya, and they've dropped out to join Moringa School because they realize, I'm spending all this money and all this time in university for a piece of paper, right? And I know, like from the trends that I see with the graduates from this university, I'm not going to be able to get a job, right? So how do I actually go somewhere where I'm getting the appropriate skills for me to be successful? Yeah, in the workforce. Yeah.
And you sort of touched on it briefly, but coding and development is one area where you're saying there's a shortage. where do you see other skill gaps?
Yeah, I mean, a lot. It could go anywhere from like marketing, sales, finance, like all the usual roles that a tech company. It could go, I don't know, just talking to so many people. It could even be journalism, right? I studied in college. So yeah, it's pretty huge.
And you get the sense that people here are kind of warming up to the idea of this is a legit alternative. So then, if the course is created, then there's going to be demand for it.
Yeah, I think outcomes speak for themselves. So I think, universities and schools have to do a lot of branding to be like, we're the most prestigious school. But when we really look at, like I said, first principles, right? Like, what does that actually mean to go to a higher education institution, right? The idea is that we're building holistic leaders, right? We're building people with the right skill sets for the market. And that's what universities are failing to do, right? So what we're actually doing instead is creating that structure, right? How do we create better leaders, right? How do we create better teammates to contribute to this economy? Yeah.
And so if you sort of project forward, sort of 3 years, what do you think Moringa School might look like?
Yeah, so in 3 years, we want to be in another location across the continent, preferably in West Africa. And we also want to start another skill set. So the skill set that, we're offering, we're still doing a lot of research on to figure out which one it is. But we want to, really start building out like a stronger model and expanding horizontally and vertically.
Yeah. Are you finding there's much competition from, not necessarily from universities, but from other organizations looking to do what you're doing?
At this point, not yet. I think, we've learned so much in the past 2 years. And something like a core philosophy of mine is that competition's good, right? And there's always going to be competition. But as long as we're putting our head down and like doing really good work, that'll speak to it for itself, right? If we're actually producing the highest quality, then no matter like how many other boot camps come up or how many other competitors come up, we're still going to be able to add a lot of value, right? End of the day, if we're adding value, then that's what matters the most. Yeah.
And what does Moringa mean?
Yeah. So Moringa is actually an herb, and it's supposed to be like a super plant, right? And it's known to kind of heal all different parts of the body. And for us, we see Moringa as medicine for relieving a huge pain point in society, which is education.
Smart. Did it take you a while? What would like the alternatives? What was on the short list? What are you going to call it?
Oh God, I don't even know. One of my team members joked that we should call it Panga School, and Panga in Swahili is hack, but it's like actually machete, so that's a little bit scary. Yeah, so
you might get some dodgy applications for that.
Yeah, no, attractive autism students. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. And so 3 years. And so is this the sort of thing where could you see yourself doing this for like 10 years, or is this kind of like I can see a problem, it's got a solid endpoint, and then I can go off and do something else?
Yeah. I see myself doing this for a long time. Yeah, I think education, like, and reforming education is something that I'm really passionate about. I'm really interested in, like, how do we rethink whole systems, and build a better one. So I hope that with Moringa School, that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Have you come across much resistance to Moringa School?
Of course, yeah. I think in the beginning, parents, especially when we didn't have enough validation, parents were like, what is this thing that I'm sending my kids to? So there were some, tensions there, but I think as we're able to keep progressing and show more and more and more evidence, it's definitely being adopted in society.
So it's the parent who's typically shelling out the cash for the thing rather than the person themselves. Yeah,
because they're still students.
Yeah. So so when they leave high school, so leave high school at 16, 18?
18, 19, yeah.
18, okay, yeah. So it's the parent who, and do they typically, are they from Nairobi, these students?
Yeah, so the students so we've had students from over 5 countries on the continent, and also outside of Nairobi. So students from Eldoret, Mombasa, like just really outside of Kenya too.
Do they just find their own accommodation?
Yeah, so we do assist them. So we have like a welcome student handbook that assists them in finding accommodation. But one of our like dreams is to be able to build like a dormitory or like somewhere where we can really build like a hacker house, so our students can always be coding. Yeah.
And what's your relationship with the government? As in, are they? So I can imagine going anything to do with education, they're kind of like, oh, that's kind of my turf. Is it? Yeah. How do you broker relations with the government?
Yeah, one of our board members is actually Dr. Bitange Namo, and so he's the he was like the ex-ICT minister here in Kenya. Yeah, so he really helps us a lot, like especially with accreditation or with relations with the government. Yeah, but I think for the most part, it's been pretty strong. Yeah.
What are the questions or concerns that the government have?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that the government looks a lot at, are we following regulation, right? And they don't quite know where to put us right now because we're not, for them, they don't consider us higher education because we're not 4 years or even 2 years. So they're like trying to grapple with how do we label this school. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, it's a work in progress, as many things are. Yeah.
And so the regulation, is that just sort of making sure that the stuff you're teaching people is legit? Like what's the regulation involved with doing a company like this?
Yeah, I think they're some people see schools as a good business. So I think what the government's afraid of is that all these schools are popping up, but they're not actually providing high quality education, right? And something that we're really pushing back on is we're actually focused on the student, right? We're not focused on of course, breaking even and making some profit is important, right? Because we can't sustain otherwise. But beyond that, we're really investing all our resources into the highest quality education. So I think the government is coming around to that and realizing, the difference.
What would be who would be your dream employer to partner with?
I mean, to be honest, I would love to see our graduates being employed by companies around the world, right? Because I think that gives huge validation to the quality of work that we're doing. I think at this point that they can, but there's visa issues, there's all these travel issues. But if we're able to kind of partner with international companies to take on some of our graduates, I think that would be incredible. Yeah. So yeah, of course, at any of the top tech companies in the Valley, or even in Europe, right? I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah. So we'll just do a few more questions. Yeah. Sorry. What are you most looking forward to in the next 6 months in a Moringa context?
In a Moringa contract. I'm really looking forward to getting more data points to show what's really working about our new model and what's not working, and building out stronger tests so that we can understand what hypotheses do we have about education and what are being proven true and false. Beyond that, in January, so for the past 2 years, we actually haven't raised any money. And we chose not to raise money because we wanted to just, get the model down right before we even think about outside investors and external pressures. But starting in January, I'm actually going back to the US and to Europe to raise money. So yeah, looking forward to that. That should be interesting. Yeah.
So how did you sort of get started then? I mean, did you just have a bit of seed capital that you had yourself? And then basically from day one, you've been making money. Money's been coming in.
Yeah, so we broke even in month 3, and then from there it was just kind of refining and building.
So what do you need money for?
Sorry?
What do you need more money for?
Expansion. Yeah, so right now the margins that we're making aren't enough to scale. I mean, we can wait a couple of years and then we'll have enough to scale, but I think the amount of demand right now for our work is pretty large. So we're trying to scale across the continent and really meet that demand. Yeah.
And dream investor? Who would it be?
I talked to First Round Capital the other day, and I think their investment philosophy is pretty cool. Unfortunately, they don't invest in companies outside the US, but they would be pretty cool. And of course, the Chan Zuckerberg initiative that a lot of people are talking about.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. And people who are listening at home, how can they follow the story of Moringa School and maybe look to apply themselves?
Sure. Our website, moringaschool.com, or Twitter and Facebook, also just Moringa School. Yeah.
Cool. Well, Audrey, that's super interesting. Thanks so much.
Yeah, of course. Thanks.
Before we head, just a quick moment to say thank you for listening. You can see the show notes for this episode by heading to samfloy.com/podcast. That's samfloy.com/podcast. This show is still relatively new, and so I really appreciate you making it through to the end. What would be great is, if you're enjoying it, to tell a couple of your friends about it too, in case they'd also be interested in giving it a listen. Also, if you have any questions, comments or feedback, please feel free to email me, podcast@samfloy.com. I'd be happy to chat. In any case, have a great week and speak to you soon.